Faith. Hey, welcome to another episode of Amp Up Solar Talk. Today we're talking about soft starts and how they help when you're trying to run high demand equipment like air conditioners or well pumps on limited power, whether that's solar, batteries, or generator. Joining us today is Mike Sokol. Mike has been working closely with SoftStartUSA products in real world applications and was recommended by their team as someone who can speak transparently about how these products actually perform. If you're watching live, go ahead and drop your questions in the chat so we can include you in the conversation. Mike, thanks so much for being here today. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I love to talk about technology and, whatever questions you guys have got, I'm here. And if I can't answer it, I know someone that can help me figure it out.
Well, great. Well, let's jump right in and let's start, Mike, with your background. So explain your relationship with SoftStartUSA and how you work with them.
Well, I was hired about 5 or 6 years ago by them. I do a lot of writing and testing for the RV industry. And they found out that I like challenges on how things work. So they hired me to actually get some really, really high speed data on how the things work so we could turn this into like marketing videos. And once we did that, they figured out, oh, I'm actually a design engineer. Oh, I'm actually a troubleshooting engineer. So for the last 5 or 6 years, I've done a lot of testing in my own lab and out in the field, go do installs, and we just get the data and show people how it works. Yes, that is my rather messy Frankenstein lab kind of a thing. Stacks of air conditioners, all kinds of meters, all kinds of stuff. And, I can kind of see exactly what's going on down at a parts per million level. It's really kind of neat.
It is really neat. So what led you into this field of testing? You have a lot of experience and a lot of technical background that you have shared with me. What led you into this field testing kind of work?
Well, I always loved doing this, even as a kid. And, in the 70s, I worked for Corning Glass as a robotics packaging machine designer. And there was always things breaking. So I was leading teams of electricians to go figure out how all this machinery worked. And that was just fascinating to me. In the 80s, I worked for Angstrom Precision. We built and calibrated nuclear missile guidance systems. After that, I integrated banking systems together. So I was always the computer guy, the super geek, as it was. And then in about 2010, the RV industry caught my eye because one of my friends in a rock and roll thing which was getting shocked on a big tour bus and didn't know why.
Oh, no.
And I looked and I said, I don't think they understand what's going on. I forgot to tell you, I've been a musician since before I could talk. So my mom said I could play. When I was 2 years old, I would toddle up to the piano and just play whatever I heard on TV.
Oh, that's amazing.
By day, I would have my hair pulled back, be calibrating missile guidance systems. At night, hair down in a chrome jumpsuit, jumping through fireballs.
You can do it all.
What? I can't get enough elevation to crowd surfing right now. Oh man, I'm not sure. But to me, this is just fascinating. I've always taught about this stuff, and I've just always loved testing and coming up with new ways to test things. So that's why they said, Mike, we didn't know you do this. I said, oh yeah, I did that for 5 years. I did that for 10 years. And, while I was doing gigs.
Yeah. So you don't actually work for SoftStartUSA. You are hired by SoftStartUSA to test their products. So you have the field experience on these products, which is why I think you're a great person to talk to about how these products actually work. So I'm really glad that you're here with us today.
Exactly. And I do a lot of consulting for a bunch of other manufacturers too.
Right.
So they're not my only one. So I get to play with all of this stuff. And sometimes they want me to test it till it blows up, which is always great.
Always fun. So what would you say were the problems that SoftStartUSA products were designed to solve in the first place?
Okay, so here's the big thing. So back in the 1940s, induction motors needed to have a little more kick. So they developed starting capacitors for them. So this is what you will call, Well, it would have some sort of a start capacitor and a start winding. So it would give like a big oomph to get the things turned over. The problem with that is it draws a huge amount of current from the power line when it does that. Sometimes 3-4 times as much power. Now, if you're plugged into a heavy duty line, let's say coming into your house or in a campground or whatever, then you can start air conditioners without a whole lot of trouble. But once you start trying to run things off of a generator or an inverter and a solar battery system, those are much more sensitive to that inrush current. So the soft start products, they can reduce the inrush 50%, sometimes 60, 70%, so that now you can run more things off of your generator. If you want to run your well pump, you want to run your air conditioner or whatever. Now, it doesn't make power. What it does is it smooths out the power requirements of a lot of devices.
Okay, why is startup such a challenge when you are trying to run off of solar and batteries and a generator?
Okay, so what happens is you're running on something that's called an inverter circuit, a pure sine inverter of some sort, whether it's an inverter generator or an inverter, running off of battery packs. The electronics in that are pretty sensitive. So when they say 3,000, continuous 4,500, peak starting. You need a lot more than that. So for example, if you go look at a Truma air conditioner, which is a fabulous unit in terms of how efficient it is, it normally runs at about 14 or 15 amps of current. It takes 80 amperes to start it, an 80 amp inrush. Now, your home wiring responds by your lights blinking. Your generator or inverter responds by shutting off.
Now, that's 6 times what it requires to run.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And many of the manufacturers have allowed me to go out to their own sites and see this stuff. I get access to the engineers, around the world, which to me is just like candy for me to play with this stuff. But that's the thing. So if you can reduce the inrush, now you can run your products. And a lot of times, you can run more things at once. So many times you're not running just the air conditioner or just a well pump. You want to have TV sets and you've got all this other stuff that you want to have in your house running at the same time. And it's not as simple as just adding up the watts. And then when you get to 5,000 or 7,000, it's going to stop. What happens is everything that you turn on, everything has that little blip of inrush current. And it's really short. Really, really short. Oh, very good. So you can see this is my little chart. And I used a data device I called Hurdle, my high rate data logger that goes at 192,000 times per second, 1 part per million accuracy. The red line on it is a 52 amp starting current with a stock capacitor that you would have from a Penguin 2 air conditioner. And you can see this is only 150 milliseconds long. That's 1/6 of a second. The yellow line is when you have a soft start RV on there, it reduces that inrush down to about 24 amps of current. Now it's a little longer, about 1/3 of a second, but 1/3 of a second is pretty quick. And you can see on the left, I can slow this down so we can see exactly what's happening. See that peak that you're happening going across there. Oh, you want to know what that little ripple is in the red line? This is just cool. One of my air conditioning engineers said, "Do you know what that is?" And I said, "I have no idea, but it all shows up." He says, "That's the Freon bubbles collapsing as they convert back into liquid from gas. You're actually seeing the bubbles pop in the Freon stream." I went, "Oh, baby, I love it." That's how sensitive this, and I built this out of junk parts I had in my lab. My high rate data logger.
And so they wouldn't do that with the soft start because it's easier on the system.
It's easier, right? Instead of so basically, when you have a regular starting capacitor, it's almost like popping the clutch in a car, and it goes arch to try to get this thing going. The soft starter is more like an automatic transmission where you kind of like feather the gas, whoop, and you get going like that. It's actually, I think, easier on the actual mechanics of the compressor.
Yeah.
And we did 5,000 cycle tests out in out at our friend's big chamber out in Goshen, Indiana, a couple years ago. So I cycled these things on and off 5,000 times.
It also reminds me of trying to start a pool lawnmower where you try to pull it and it's really, really hard. And when you finally get it going, it just seems really
Once it pops over
easy
it,
to
it
pull,
goes.
and
So
then
this could be
it
like
gets
a
worse.
compression release. So you can think of it if you guys have done it with a chainsaw or motorcycle or whatever, and you basically that first that you're trying to get it over, it acts like I'm
That's the surge.
spinning it up. So that's the surge, right? That it's requiring to get going. And then once it gets going, and that's all the longer it takes. It's, it's like the snap of your fingers. The other thing that's interesting, the first time I put Soft Start RV on an air conditioner, I didn't know that the compressor had started, because normally you hear it kind of go wonk. It just went, and I went, is this thing running? And I'm looking at the amperage and I go, this thing is running. So it doesn't wake you up at night if you're in your RV. And the neighbors said, we noticed your air conditioner's not making noise anymore. I installed one over in my kids' house, my twins' house, and their air conditioner on the outside was next to their neighbor's bedroom. And once I put that on, they said, everything got real quieter. Thank you very much. And I went, well, yeah, I'll take the credit. But that's part of it. It starts it up easier. People ask, why don't manufacturers do it? Well, because it costs money.
Yeah. Right. Well, we do have a couple of audience questions. Let's ask these real quick. At Three Strands Farm says, will a soft start negate a manufacturer's warranty?
No, it doesn't. In fact, many of the manufacturers now are offering soft start units themselves, that they're extra ones that they can put in. And we've found that that some of the ones that they designed didn't work so well, so they've been recommending SoftStartUSA products. We also have a spliceless install system. It doesn't require cutting any wires. So when in the very, very beginning, when you started cutting wires and bugging them together, manufacturers didn't like that. They seem to be absolutely fine with the spliceless install kits. And I've done a pile of videos for these guys at SoftStartUSA on a bench. I think you may have a video of me doing that. And I'm just showing how this all stuff kind of hooks up and plugs in.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can see they've got every one of these, and this is the older one. It's a bigger one, but they'll have a little chart. It'll show you exactly what color wire needs what kind of terminal on the end of it. I always recommend everybody buy a nice crimper, right? And put this stuff together. And it says, I need a male terminal. I need a female terminal, blah, blah, blah. Don't go climb up on the roof of your RV or house and then say, I don't have enough tools or terminals or whatever. And then you go. So again, I do a lot of install training for people. And that's, that's the thing. Every air conditioner is a bit different, has different color codes. They probably have hundreds of different ones that show how this whole thing works.
Very nice. We have another question from Aberama Gold. It says the 0.06 second ramp up time is very fast. Can you explain the engineering behind the quick and smooth power delivery?
Oh yeah, a bit. So what happens? I think did you have the graph that showed just the like the red and yellow thing above themselves, so you can kind of see the waveforms in the background? Do you happen to have that up?
We'll grab it and just
grab it a second. Okay, so what happens? Okay,
yep.
so here's how this works. It is basically a fancy dimming circuit. And this is not proprietary. This is out there. So you know how a light dimmer works? That, when you could turn it down, when you turn it up, your lights kind of come up and then whoosh, right?
Dimmer switch, yeah.
It's right. Now, yeah, there you go. You can see in the background, see those little jiggly lines in the background? Each of that's 60 hertz stuff. And you can kind of see what's happening on the bottom one. It's got little jaggedy edges. That is a light dimmer. Instead of flicking a switch on, the light dimmer comes on in a third of a second or a quarter of a second or whatever. And it kind of goes whoosh like that. And that's what it's doing. It's listening for the start, and then it's starting it up like that. Now, part of the trick of all this is the physics of an air conditioner. It's already bled down and doesn't have any head pressure. So when it first spins up, it's easy to kind of get the thing going because it doesn't have any pressure. It takes about a half a second for the thing to spin up fast enough for it to develop pressure to start pushing back, which means we have that half second to get that rotor up to speed before the pressure catches up with it, which I think is just fascinating, physics of this. Now, if you turn an air conditioner
really
off
neat.
and turn it back on, it kind of goes, ugh. You've heard them grind and grunt. It's because it's got the head pressure hasn't leaked off yet.
Right. That makes sense.
Isn't it neat? It's fun stuff.
Yeah. So at Slicester says, are these only for AC units or can it be used for water pumps as well? So this does lead us into SoftStart RV USA. So SoftStart USA has a lot of products. They have SoftStart RV, SoftStart Up, SoftStart Well Pump, SoftStart Home. Can you give us a general overview of what each of these products are?
Okay. So yeah, the first ones were the SoftStart RVs. These are the ones, the little boxes that actually mount up inside of the air conditioner, and you hook it into the start windings. Every air conditioner out there is wired a little bit differently, so you got to do it a little bit different. They also have a SoftStart Home product. So it's meant to go on a 240 volt central air conditioner. I think up to 6 ton is what they've got. I've installed a bunch of them. They can reduce the inrush, some of these, by 70 or 80%. So some of these older ones really were power hogs on startup. They have a marine version of it as well, which I don't do a lot of boating, so I have never installed one. But if someone wants to take me out on their boat for some sail fishing or something, maybe I'll help them hook it up. And of course, the two new ones, one is SoftStart Up, which is a plug and play unit, which I think is right behind your shoulder on the one side. And that plugs into like a 50 amp campground outlet. That's designed for a camper specifically. So that'll allow you to start 2 air conditioners off of a 30 amp service if need be, but it's the same kind of a thing. And then the newest stuff that we're working on is a SoftStart Well Pump. And I've been instrumental in the design of that all from the very get-go. Right now, it will start up to a 3 horsepower, 240 volt well pump, and as low as a half horsepower. And it'll run on 120 or 240 volts. And I'm getting a lot of test stuff done on that right now to just see how all of that works. I've also used that to start up a 5 horsepower air compressor, 240 volt. Wink, wink, hint, hint.
The well pump?
Yes. Hint, hint, wink, wink. I'm not, but I haven't done, I've done it a few hundred cycles. So it seems to react favorably on air compressors, but more testing needs to be done. And there may be some future products that would be for even larger well pumps. But right now, this seems to be like the sweet spot of where well pumps are, submersible well pumps. And it could probably work on a jet pump if you wanted to, but I haven't done any testing.
So maybe you have more to say, but we did have at Creation Museum, Texas ask, does it work with a scroll compressor?
It should. Yeah, it should auto. So basically, rather than piston based, it's just one of those guys that spins, and it should. So basically what it's doing, it's listening for inrush current. So, when you hit the switch for this thing, it throws a separate power through the starting capacitor through the start winding. And that's what gets this thing going. If it's got a second winding in it and then it needs to get it spinning, any of these things. Now, you don't need this for 3-phase power. The really, really large ones, 3-phase power, actually, the flex fields rotate automatically, which means you don't need to create an artificial rotation. But if it's single phase, that is 120 or 240 volt, it needs to have some sort of a kick in the right direction to get it started. So it should work with that just fine. Okay.
So what I would like to know is you've got SoftStart RV, you've got SoftStart Home, you've got SoftStart Home 3, SoftStart Home 6, you've got SoftStart Up. We've got all these things, and they all generally are there for helping to manage that surge.
Right.
So why, if I'm looking at managing a surge on an appliance,
Right.
um, why couldn't I just use the cheapest device for whichever one I want to hook it up to? Why does it matter that it's for an AC? Why does it matter that it's for my home or for my RV? What is the differences? What are the differences between the two? Is it installation? Is it amperage?
Some of it's
How do I
installation,
tell in my
right? But,
design?
but a lot of this has to do with the algorithms of how you start this up. So
Yeah.
everything kind of acts differently, in terms
Okay.
of, and will accept different amounts of current ramp up. So rather than going through a learning process where you've got to mess around with it a whole bunch of times, each one of these has been tuned so that it
Perfect.
knows what kind of envelope you're trying to create. That little starting envelope, it
Mm-hmm.
it it sort of figures that out because, okay, so this is what you need for a well pump, which is different than what you need for an air conditioner. So a well pump will not work on an air conditioner one. An air conditioner one doesn't really like a well pump one, because think about a well pump, you're pushing a column of water up that could be 300 feet tall, and it's
Yeah.
not compressible, right? It's like a steel rod. So when it
Mm-hmm.
pushes it, there's this grunt to get this stuff moving in that direction. So it has a completely different starting profile compared to, as we
Exactly.
said, a compressor, which doesn't have much till it gets going. It's got about a half a second before it spins up.
Mm-hmm.
So each one of these has been tuned specifically to what its destiny is.
Yeah. So what would the Start Home 3 and 6? What would be those differences?
Well, again, they're 240-volt units. They're
Mm-hmm.
they're meant to go on a modern compressor. They're very, very similar to a rooftop air conditioner. They're just built beefier so that they
Mm-hmm.
can handle 240 volts. There are no 240-volt RV air conditioners. They're all 120 volt. There
Okay.
are very limited. I would say really are no 240, no 120-volt home air conditioners. Now, this does
Mm-hmm.
not work at all, and you don't need it with a modern mini split air conditioner, because that has its own variable speed startup, and it does whoosh. It does that automatically.
Mm-hmm.
But for the millions and millions of standard compressor air conditioners out there, that's a really, really important function to be able to get them started. Because again, I see more and more people going to solar backup systems, and I'm going to experiment later this year myself with home stuff. I hate the idea of just having big generators running, even though I have generators coming out of my ears. What I'd really like to do is start doing some more solar panel experiments and whatnot, just because, well, I'm interested in all of it. And, I just love geeking out with the technology.
So when you think about um, handling your surge when you're connected to the grid, how important is that? Would it benefit everybody to have this,
It
or would it be just when you're talking about backup power?
See, again, it all depends. Now, large campgrounds, what they have is they have a problem is if you start exceeding these peak currents, they get held to higher cost per kilowatt hour. They get a surcharge because they have a lot of peak usage. Now, you don't get that in your house, kind of a thing, because
Mm-hmm.
unless you're a big company, you don't have that sort of thing. So if you're not having any trouble, it may not be a problem, but it does make your air conditioner quieter when it starts up. So if you hear that thing banging out there and the neighbors don't like it and then the dogs start barking, right there, that's worth the ticket of admission, I think, because it really does reduce all of the noise. And it could, in theory, from our testing, maybe even extend the life of your air conditioner compressor. Now, that
Okay.
may not be a problem because people throw these away. They start after 15 years or so. But all I know is it seems to be easier on the startup, and it doesn't really bang around so much. And, every time that thing bangs, it starts to wear things. But
Sure.
as soon as you're going on, for instance, my twin brother Joe, and yes, I have a twin. He put a big 20 kilowatt inverter generator out at his house in Monterey Bay and out in California. And the darn thing can't start his home air conditioners. 20 kilowatt unit because of the inrush. So they came back in, wired it back into the power line. They said, well, if you're running off of generator, you just can't run your air conditioners, Joe. And I went, Joe, next time I'm coming out, guess what? You're going to buy me some really good scotch, and I'm going to bring a couple of these units, and we're going to wire your air conditioners up. It's not hard to do. I mean, even if you don't know what you're doing, it's 30 minutes. If you do know what you're doing, it's probably 10 or 15. But I think that's one of the problems. They're running off of a big, brand new inverter generator with a big, massive propane tank buried in the yard and all that other stuff. And they didn't size it. They didn't consider the inrush current of the air conditioners. So sad.
And you haven't hooked it up yet?
No, he's out on the West Coast.
Yeah.
He's Monterey Bay. I'm in Funkstown, Maryland.
Totally opposite ends of the world.
Ends of the world. I get out there maybe once a year. I was just out there over the last year, and he showed me this, and I'm going, well, Joe, this is ridiculous. And he goes, well, if I only knew somebody that knew something about this. I'm like, oh, Joe. But he hired a company that put massive solar panels in, and it's a grid tie system. He doesn't have any backup if the power goes out. He can't run the solar panels, right? Doesn't have battery backup. But he does have, he put a big gen set out there, but the gen set can't run the air conditioners. Now, it's not a big deal. He's up on the mountain overlooking Monterey Bay, so probably not that super important. But if that was important for somebody, you're going to want whoever your solar installer is to go look at really what are your inrush currents from these things, and can your inverter handle this? Because if not, it just shuts you down. I've seen some seniors that were, they got into real trouble because, in their RVs, it was getting 110 degrees inside of their RVs in the summer. They go camping in the desert and expect their air conditioners to work.
Yeah.
They have to understand that that's not gonna happen. So, a lot of this has to do with, there are times when just by itself, it will help in terms of noise and everything. But of course, the real key is if you're going to be running on any kind of a backup generator, man, you really ought to think about this, because I know when there's an emergency and you need it, it's too late to go figure it out because everybody's got that emergency at the same time.
Sure.
Best to figure it out when you have time and you can get the parts in and you can do a few experiments. So I do a lot of training videos on how to measure inrush currents. So make sure your installer understands, what kind of appliances that you're actually trying to run off of this thing.
Right. I know a lot of times we just take average kilowatt usage and design systems based on that rather than what surges that you actually have. So,
and if they've got big stuff, it takes a lot of power to be able to do this sort of thing. So
something to think about.
Something to think about. And don't wait for the power to go out to test it. When you put this together, go test it. See how long you can run off of it. How long can you run your CPAP machines off of this? A lot of people absolutely need this. My neighbor over our big snow thing that we had a couple of weeks ago, he's absolutely dependent upon an oxygen concentrator. If he didn't have it for an hour, he's got real serious lung problems. If he didn't have oxygen for an hour, he would die. And he had some extra oxygen bottles, and they're calling in a panic. And I said, well, I've got a few big Jackery, solar battery backup things. I took him over there. I said, well, I'll give you another 8 to 10 hours of runtime off of it. And of course, his wife's going, I was thinking about getting a generator, but then I'd have to run a cord in the window and I have to go out and start it. And, she's old and frail. And I said, here, take some of these. And that's the thing. If you're home with a medical condition, you absolutely, that requires power, you absolutely want to have some sort of backup system. Solar on the roof, backup batteries, an inverter. You don't have to run all the other stuff. You're not going to run your electric oven off of this.
Right.
But you could run a microwave,
Right.
and
always a good idea to make sure that you're going to be taken care of.
Make sure you're taken care of, especially if you've got infants, you've got seniors, and whenever something goes wrong, all the neighbors call me.
Yeah. Well, help me understand something. We've got the soft startup, which is plug and play, and we've got soft start RV. They're
Right.
both for RVs. Um, I like wiring stuff. Not everybody does. Plug and play option is always really nice. When is the best use case for the plug and play, and when is it not the best option?
Okay, so the plug and play unit right now, um, it really wants to be in an RV. It is not something. It is not going to be able to do all the complex household loads because it has to understand the loads going in. We've tuned this for standard RV loads. If you're going to be doing this for a house system, then if you're going to do well pump, guess what? You get the well pump version, handles the well pump. So that's doing
Mhm.
its one little thing all by itself. And if you're doing a air conditioner heat pump, central air, guess what? You put one on there. So each of those are tuned specifically for those particular products. So an RV is kind of a little tiny world. If you're doing something like this for a home system, if you're going to want a well pump, one for the well pump, you're going to want to have a home unit for the air conditioner, kind of a thing. And there may be future products out there as we see things develop. But right now, those are the main ones that you would use for your house, for a residential unit. And if you're running off of solar panel, you're running off of inverters. You just are.
Right. But if we hone these two things down to the soft start RV and the soft startup, um, which one would you? When would you
Okay, so
just use the startup and the RV?
so here's the thing. If you just have two air conditioners on the roof and you're
Hmm.
running off trying to run off of 30 amp or maybe a 3 to 4,000 watt generator, that works fine. It will not go beyond two air conditioners. It's got to have two air conditioners on one on either line. So if you're going to do three air conditioners, guess what? The best thing to do is get three soft start RV units and install them. You cannot combine them. That is you can't say, oh, I'm
Okay.
saving more here and over there. I've tried it. It doesn't work. I predicted it was not going to work. Guess what? It does not work. So you can't say I've got soft start RVs built up up top. I'm going to also get a plug and play one, soft start up. You got to pick one way or the other. Now, the nice
Hmm.
thing about the soft start up is you can take this and plug this into a 30 amp service or a 50 amp service. I have tested that thing trying to destroy it, literally jamming wires together and tripping 50 amp circuit breakers with sparks flying everywhere dozens of times. So that thing will withstand like the worst kind of punishment. I think that's great. But again, it is not going to be something you want to try to power your entire house off because a house has got way too many complex loads in it. We've
Sure.
gone through all the bits and pieces of it. So it's
Hmm.
better to kind of to soft start protect each region of your
Okay.
house. So well pump needs its own thing. And if you have a central air, it's going to need its own thing. And those are the two big ones that you would normally have in a residential
Gotcha.
situation. Does it make
Well, tell me
sense?
this, Mike. Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything coming up with Soft Start USA that you've been working on that you're particularly excited about?
Well, there's a bunch of stuff, but it's all under NDA. I'm under NDA with everybody, and I will just tell you this: I also consult with the NEC, National Electrical Code Committees, on
Hmm.
all of the stuff. So I consult with these guys on new upcoming regulations that are happening. And so there's a bunch of really fun stuff, but I can't talk about it. Um,
Oh
but
man.
I know, and I tell people I've got NDAs on the NDAs. There's ones that I can't even talk about. There is so, for example, I there's some new things coming along on aluminum batteries rather than lithium. I don't know if you've seen any of that stuff yet. The Germans have come up with this, and there's some fuel cell stuff happening that I've been promised. Some testing, not going to be cheap, not going to be an RV soon, but man, oh man, I get all the cool toys.
Well, I
Um,
always have to ask the question because I got to see what I can get out of you.
oh, my twin was a senior programmer out at Apple Computer. He's one of the original writers of OS 10. And when he would come into the house, my boys, who are computer nerds, hey, Uncle Joe, what's happening with the new iPhone? What's happening to this? Is the new thing out yet? And he goes, I don't know. Is it? I'm going, Joe, you wrote the code for it. You know exactly what it is. He says, I can't tell your kids because they're blabbermouths. They'll tell everybody at school and then I'll be in trouble. I'm going, yeah. So there are some stuff. So stand by. There's some new things coming up in the next few months that I think are just absolutely fascinating. And that I'm working on developing. But some of this is, for instance, maybe a heavier version of well pump. Maybe. That's about as far as that could do really, really big well pumps.
Well, we think the SoftStartUSA products are really cool, and we appreciate all that you're doing for them to make this a great product. And we thank you for joining the show and taking the time to share your experience with the SoftStartUSA products. So this conversation has really helped me to understand how such a small device can make it when it comes to managing startup demand. If you guys would like to learn more about the StartUSA products, you can check them out at signaturesolar.com. And if you have questions about your specific setup, our team will be happy to review your system and help you determine the best solution. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Facebook so you never miss an episode. Off-Grid Kenny will be back in our next episode, bringing practical tips and tricks to help make installs cleaner and more efficient. So we'll see you next time right here on Amp Up. Mike, thanks again.
Kelly, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. We'll see you later.